Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. We are in our second month of the year and got a full house. Got some wonderful recognitions to go and look forward to that tonight. So thank you all for joining us. I will call our regular scheduled February meeting to order. I will ask Mr. Hinkle to give us an invocation. It will then be followed by our pledge. When we do our pledge, we would ask everyone to please stand as we recite our pledge. But at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Hinkle for our invocation.
Let us bow our heads for a few seconds, please. Lord, we thank you for allowing us to come together as a public body this evening to do the people's work. We ask that you guide and direct us in the decisions that we make that are pleasing in your sight and are pleasing into the community sight and for the greater good. We ask that you be with those in this country and around the world who are suffering this evening from the tragedies of man-made and nature-made that are going on, and we ask you be with those people who are distressed from these happenings, that you be with them and bring them peace, and those who have lost their life, that you be with their families, that they also, as they are grieving, that you be with them and bring them comfort. In all these things and any others that you see we may need but have not asked for, we ask for your praise and gifts. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for your assistance there, and we're missing one of our council members, Ms. Harris. She has a death in the family, and our thoughts and prayers go out to her and her family as well. Council, you have your agendas with you. I will ask if there are any adjustments to tonight's agenda. Staff?
No, sir.
Okay. Council, seeing there are no adjustments at this time, may I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Motion is made, receive a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. We will follow along our agenda as presented. The next item is our consent agenda. These are 3 sets of minutes, some budget amendments that we discussed on Monday, approval of an ordinance regarding the American Rescue Plan Act funds, also the additional ordinance on amending the code, chapter 10, regarding noise. I don't believe there are any other items we discussed. If there's nothing else that council wants to add or subtract from the consent, I would ask that a motion be made to approve our consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is made, received a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item on our agenda is recognition and presentations. First item on the agenda is the recognition of Outer County Cheer Classic champions. That would be the Troutman Middle School Bobcats cheerleading team. I believe on Friday, January 27th, the Troutman Middle School Bobcats cheerleading team competed in the second annual Iredell County Cheer Classic. The event was held at South Iredell, and in all, 7 Iredell County middle school teams competed for the championship title. Some of the things the cheer team were judged on were tumbling, stunning, showmanship, synchronization, sharpness, and crowd engagement. The Troutman cheer team won the championship and brought home the trophy. This is actually the second year in a row that Troutman Middle School Bobcats cheer team has won the competition. I'd like to congratulate them and the coaches and all the parents. And I would ask the coaches if they would like to come up and have any comment. I believe Ms. Reap and Ms. Johnson. I was told you have an hour to speak.
I got an hour's worth.
Oh, that's
Okay.
yeah.
That's actually last year's cheer squad, the first time we won the championship, and this is our cheer squad this year. We're really proud of them. They worked really hard and beat out 7 other schools to win, and we're just really proud of them and glad that you guys would recognize them for us.
Yeah, we have a great team. We're a family through and through, you know, not just with cheerleading, but with other things too. And you guys are awesome. You guys, you know, this was our last year coaching, and so we're a great team to go out with, and we're very proud of them. And we're glad that you guys won it because
You deserve it.
you deserve it. You worked
Yes.
very hard, and we're very proud of you.
Awesome. So would you mind introducing them, and I would ask them each to come up. I'd like to give them a token of our appreciation for all their hard work.
You want us to call them or?
Yep, and come up and we'll shake each one of the council members' hand.
Shakira Chambers.
Faith Jeter.
Congratulations.
Ashaya Robinson.
Zoe Woods.
Shemaya Lyons.
Congratulations.
Malia Fort.
Congratulations.
Jade Eichert.
Congratulations.
Talia Doolin.
Congratulations.
Kalia Schubert.
And Sanaya McConaughey.
Congratulations.
Do you want to make 2 rows?
They can back up there, and that'd be great. Thank you, ladies.
Ladies, that is, you should have received a Town of Troutman patch and also a coin. Did each one of you get a patch and a coin? Well, I didn't miss it. Anyone? Okay, awesome. Thank you again for all your hard work. Look forward to you all bringing home the trophy again. I know you all put a lot into it, and again, thank all the parents for what you do to make sure our young folks are active and learning some great principles as they compete. And coaches, you've done a great job, and sounds like this will be your last year, but you'll be missed, and I'm sure you'll pass the gavel on. So thank you so much. You all are welcome to stay, or you're welcome to leave. So I won't hold you hostage. I know how it is during the weekday, so thank you. All right, the next item on our agenda is recognition of our Employee of the Month. And I will turn it over to Mr. Wyatt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would just like everyone to know that's in attendance tonight as we spoke Monday. This is something new the town of Troutman is doing. We have, all of our employees are putting forth great effort. However, we wanted to take time to recognize one a month, and that one person can be renominated and receive the award all the rest of the months if they so earn it. So it's not one that's going to be passed over to make sure that different people get. But in this particular award, we wanted to do something to let the community as well as you council members hear of what some extraordinary things some of the employees are doing other than working their basic 40 hours and then going home. At this time, I turn it over to Adam Lippert, who's the Public Works Director, so he can speak of his employee.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'd like to recognize Public Works Pump Technician Mark Jewett. Mark, you want to come up here with me? Probably not, but he's going to. So, all right. Mark's one of our newest members of the Public Works team. He joined us in February of 2022. Over the past year, Mark has far exceeded all expectations put into place within his role. He's been assigned some of the most demanding projects and goal-oriented action plans, only to complete each one efficiently and with unmatched enthusiasm. Mark's love and devotion for his job and teammates, drive for his work, attention to detail and goals he strives to achieve on and off the clock are all skills and character traits that cannot be taught. I'd like to give one example of the type of employee Mark is. When he took on one of our projects, which was overseeing a pump station efficiency program that involves rebuilding underperforming pumps, Mark had years of mechanical experience, construction experience, but was new to these type of systems. During initial training, it was noted how quickly Mark was learning the process, which generally takes some time due to the precision of the pumps and the way you have to rebuild them. We later learned that Mark was watching specific training videos on his own time during lunch hour, after hours, and going to Gorman Rupp's site and downloading videos and watching them to learn more about these pumps. That spoke volumes about Mark's desire and willingness to succeed. There are many more examples, but that one shows how serious and determined Mark is to take ownership of his assigned duties and excel at them. So Mark, as a result of your exemplary performance, I congratulate you on being named the January 2023 Employee of the Month for the town of Troutman. Keep up the excellent work. Very good. Absolutely, buddy. Yep.
You're the best, boss.
Mark, your picture. Yep. Get your picture, dude.
Did you want to be with us?
Not really, but I
Congratulations, Mark. Thank you.
Now I know you're ready.
Thank you for all the work.
Thank you very much.
Can you come down to the floor?
Congratulations. Thank you. Good to see you.
Can you come down to floor level so we can see the council?
Yep.
Missing some people. Here we go.
hang tight. Thank you.
Come get a good one.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Go ahead.
a couple other supervisor, Austin Walls here and his family, if, with you all's permission, we'd like to excuse them too, but they're welcome to stay.
Absolutely. Mark, thank you again for all your hard work. It's great to have great employees like yourself who are willing to put in the extra. It's not always recognized, but want you to know from the council and the staff that we appreciate all that you do. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. And as Mr. Wyatt said, you're welcome to stay, but you're also welcome to leave. So thank you so much.
We're gonna go celebrate.
Some of the council might want to go along with you, but we'll finish our business.
Thank you.
Not too much, Mark, you gotta work tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Wyatt, for that. And our Public Works Department under Mr. Lippert a lot of times go unnoticed. And again, we appreciate all the work that you all do in keeping our Public Works Department in an excellent condition. So thank you so much. The next item on our agenda is old business, and the first item is an annexation request, AX 2208 Shin Farms. The applicant is John Shin, 149.17 plus or minus acres. The pins are in your packet. It's Weathers Creek Road. The applicant is Robert Shin, 127 acres. 127.09 acres, and that pin is also referenced, and it's on Houston Road. Total acreage is 276.26 plus or minus. This is an item that was deferred from the council's January meeting. At this time, I will open this public hearing and allow for any motions before I move forward.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we temporarily delay the public hearing on the annexation request and move to the public hearing on the rezoning and then return to the annexation hearing part, so forth, to be closed. So
Okay. There's a motion that we suspend this public hearing until we hear the rezoning. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Motion is made, received a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. We'll suspend this public hearing until we do the rezoning. That will take us to the next item, which is a rezoning request, CZRM 2209, Shin Farms Road. The applicant is John Shin, 149.17 acres. The pins are referenced in your agenda. Weathers Creek Road, the applicant being Robert Shin, also 127.09 plus or minus acres. Again, that pin is referenced in your agenda, and that's 773 Houston Road. Total acres 276.26 acres, and that is a rezoning request from Ardell County Residential Agricultural RA2 conditional zoning mixed use residential. This item too was deferred from our January meeting. I will now open this public hearing, and I will turn it over to Ms. Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you stated, this is a request for conditional zoning The property that we are considering rezoning this evening is off of Houston Road at Weathers Creek Road. It is currently in the county and it's zoned RA, which is residential agriculture. The applicant is requesting that the town, annex and then rezone this property to CZRM. The reason this is conditional is because all RM districts require conditional zoning. So that is one of the reasons we are hearing this evening. The purpose of this conditional zoning is to allow for a 278 acre site to be developed for a 598 single-family lot subdivision. The area that we are looking at, the property is highlighted on the overhead and on your screens in red. As you can see, it's located, it's quite a bit of acreage. It's located off of Weathers Creek and Houston Roads. This is a copy of the zoning map. You can see all the property located in the county. The adjacent properties there are in the town. The green here in this area, well, my pointer's not working, is in the town limits. It's zoned RT. That's the Sanders Ridge subdivision. There's also Westmoreland Village being developed in this area in the pink there at the bottom of the screen, which was conditionally zoned several years ago as well. Thank you. This is a copy of our land use map. The land use or the future land use for this property is medium density residential. A recent change to our land use plan increased that density to 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre. So that is what we are looking at tonight. That's what the land use plan is suggesting is a good use of this property. This is a copy of the applicant's latest site plan. As you can see, it's 598 lots, which is a density of 2.14 dwelling units per acre. Shin Creek does bisect the property. You can see that there on the screen. That's that dark line running through the middle of the project. A portion of this property is identified as being in the floodplain. I do want to point out that we do have an open space requirement of 10%. On this particular project, the applicant is offering or proposing 42% open space on the site. I'm just to give you an update of where we are. As you stated, Mr. Mayor, this project was originally heard by the Planning Board back in October. Several deferrals were requested by the applicant as they worked through issues with basically on-site power lines. There are power lines that run through this property, and the applicant was hoping that they could either have those buried or moved, so they were working through those issues. There's also a request made of the applicant that they provide some recreation use or some property for recreation use to the town. They have agreed to this. There's 3/4 of an acre shown on the site plan that they are willing to donate to the town for park use. And the applicant, I'm sure, will go into this more in their presentation. This has been, again, that open space was added to the conditions list and the site plan. I want to point out that a TIA was produced for this project, which is a requirement of our ordinance. A lot of times when we get to this point in our public hearing process, DOT has not had an opportunity to review the TIA yet. So what we do is we condition our rezoning based on the fact that any improvements required by the TIA and NCDOT will be provided by the applicant. So that's something that we do. But in this case, since there's been so much time between the planning board and the council meeting, DOT actually has had an opportunity to review that TIA and make recommendations. Like I said, the TIA has been provided. I've listed the improvements there that are being recommended as of this morning by NCDOT. There's 5 recommendations there. I want to point out as well that an original offering of the applicant or suggestion was to donate $150,000 to offset impacts at Houston Road and Highway 21. That is what they were willing to do at that time. So I wanted to point that out as well. This property is not located in a watershed. However, due to the size of the project, the town will require on-site BMPs. And just to go back to that $150,000 there for just a moment, I didn't go into enough detail, but that was what was being offered by the applicant. Staff would suggest that that donation be made in addition to the 5 conditions or recommendations of NCDOT, just to offset the impacts there at Houston Road and Highway 21 that this project will have on that intersection. All conditional zonings require a community meeting. That was held on August the 9th. There is a community meeting report that's included in your packet. Concerns and comment from that meeting, of course, included traffic. There were conversations about the bridge at Westmoreland Road and the proposed connection to the Sanders Ridge development and to the new high school. The planning board heard this in October. They recommended 4-2 to approve the request. Their statement of consistency is there for you to see. I won't read that out loud, but that is their consistency statement that was made by the planning board. Staff is also recommending approval. We feel that the strategic plan calls for the site to be developed as medium-density residential. The site, if approved, will be developed actually at 2.14 units per acre, because since this was written, they have reduced their unit count. So we feel that what they're proposing fits within our strategic plan. I just want to point out, too, that our UDO also contains additional safeguards that will ensure the quality of the development on the site. That is the end of staff's presentation. The applicant is here as well. They have a presentation that they would like to share with you. But if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Before we go to the applicant, any questions for Ms. Hare?
I may have some for you a little bit, but I want to hear from the applicants first.
The only question I have is that I was looking back at on the planning board's letter, they had those conditions added, and I believe they're all included. Is that correct?
You are correct. I apologize for not pointing that out. But there were several conditions that the planning board requested. The applicant did include those in their updated site plan.
That's what I was thinking. I picked them all up. I want to be sure.
As you say, the applicant's here. Welcome to hear from the applicant.
All right. Let's see if it works. Maybe just needs to be a little closer. I'll just. Good evening, Council. I'm Paul Pinnell with Urban Design Partners, representing the petitioner tonight for Shin Farm CZRM 2209. 278 four-parcel property located north of Houston Road, and actually on the east and west side of Weathers Creek. Before we really dig into this, I want to go ahead and thank Lynn and staff for providing such a thorough presentation. Don't have much left to talk about, but we'll go through this and provide some additional details, and I'm sure I can provide a little additional information for Council's benefit. So this is an existing picture of the site today. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. I think probably at some point in time you guys have probably driven by and you're familiar with its location. Again, just north of Houston Road, and it's on the east and west side of Weathers Creek. Shin Creek does cut through the entire site. We'll get into that a little bit and how we're utilizing those areas in a future slide. We're directly adjacent the town limits, as Lynn had previously indicated. The next agenda item tonight is in regards to the annexation for this property into the town limits. Today, it's owned Iredell County RA. We're requesting CZRM for 598 residential units on site. 278 acres with 598 residential units equates to 2.14 dwelling units per acre. Within the town future land use plan, it indicates that medium density is appropriate here. That's approximately 2 to 3 units per acre. And again, we're at 2.14. Oh, I jumped ahead. That was the next slide. So this is the current land use map. Well, let's see if which button is it the top button? Let's see. No, it doesn't want to work for me either. Well, you can see the site here, indicating where we are approximately just west of east of 77. Now, as we've gone through this process, we've been working on this petition for quite some time now, better part of a year, and there have been multiple different design considerations that we have taken into account. Existing site conditions, of course, there's quite a lot of green space and open space that we are maintaining on site. Environmental features, streams, creeks, and some wetlands on site. We actually have a slide to show you that as well. The Unified Development Ordinance of Troutman, the future land use map, our site layout, how it wants to fit on site, paying homage to the existing topography. Community input, we had a very informative and enjoyable community meeting a few months back. Troutman planning and staff direction, which has been very beneficial throughout this process. the zoning district and the land use, taking into account how we are meant to design these types of spaces utilizing the UDO. Environmental features, existing vehicular traffic patterns. We'll get into a little bit of that detail here in a moment as well. Pedestrian safety, making sure that we have a safe, walkable environment on site. We have some more details on that. Green space and open space, and also incorporating interesting amenity areas based on the programming for the overall development as well. As Lynn had previously shown, this is the existing site plan showing those 598 residential units on site. Houston Road is just to the south. If I had a clicker that worked, we have one point of access. I will just go ahead and indicate where these are. We have one point of access here on Houston Road. We have another point of access along Weathers Creek, connecting one phase and another phase of the development, and then also one a little further north on Weathers Creek as well. Shin Creek and other tributaries are located. That's the shaded dark area. Those areas are buffers. Those aren't the actual creeks. It's just showing those protected buffer areas adjacent to the creeks themselves. In the next slide, we have a rendered site plan showing really where those green and open space areas are located. Much of the land area out here today is farmland. A lot of the areas where existing trees are found within those tributary and creek areas. The beige rectangles, those are the lots that are being proposed here. Now, before I jump to the next slide, I just wanted to go ahead and note that we have come up with a thematic idea as to the why this community is being developed. Why do we want to develop this community? Well, it's 3 separate phases, and all of them represent essentially the life cycle of a family. On the east side of Weathers Creek, we have a new families, a starting families phase of homes. They're going to be your more attainable first home ownership neighborhood. You have your growing families. Those are going to be your families. They're going to have older children, middle-aged adults, and then on the north side of Shin Creek, we have an age-targeted community as well. It's going to be targeted towards your 55 and up adult individuals, not age-restricted, but age-targeted. The homes will be patio homes, single-floor, master-down type of residential homes. So within these individual phases, we have targeted very specific amenity areas that we would like to incorporate into the plan itself. Now, during planning board, we had presented all of these. We have a larger master amenity area that is there for the benefit of all within each of these phases. But also, we have some ideas for the amenities and the types of amenities that we would like to incorporate into each one of these phases. So, for example, the new families phase, tot lots, children's playground, passive areas, walking paths, green space with seating areas, a dog park, things of that nature that would accommodate the needs of the lifestyle of a new family and a growing family. The growing families, we have the core amenity area, our community pool, playgrounds, community greens, potentially an amphitheater with associated passive green space. We've had a lot of discussions about the wonderful pickleball sport that has been apparently is the fastest growing sport in America. I feel like I hear that about a lot of sports. I'm not sure if that's true of pickleball, but I think it's just fun for people to say. Disc golf, again, 130 acres of open space on site. I think there's ample opportunity to provide some disc golf on site, maybe even the potential for an arboretum in some of these green spaces by the creek. Fire pits, dog washing stations, potentially providing conduit for food truck hookups to have a food truck event on site. Greenway trails, we'll have more information about this in just a moment. Electric vehicle charging stations, as friends and family come to visit, maybe provide them an opportunity, a public opportunity to charge their cars. And community package lockers, we're all hearing about, packages disappearing from front steps these days. Maybe there's an opportunity here within the core amenity area to provide some community lockers for community members. The age-targeted area, maybe potentially a community garden, walking trails with fitness stations along those walking trails, additional program green space, including hardscaped, maybe a wine garden where everyone can go and sit and just relax and enjoy their wine in the afternoon. Butterfly gardens, and again, I had mentioned previously an arboretum. Now, one item that we would like to bring up is we don't have any vehicular connectivity between the growing family section and the age-targeted section. But what we do have is a substantial pedestrian multimodal trail network that connects the entire community. That community would be connected through a series and a variety of hardscape paths, mulched paths, providing that opportunity for family members to not have to get into their car and drive to the amenities that are being provided within this community. So, for example, if the grandkids are visiting the growing or are visiting the age-targeted community, the grandparents don't necessarily need to hop into a car and drive to the amenity area. They could potentially hop on a bike or just walk to the amenity area. Yes, Councilmember.
Could you read the legend?
Oh, yes. I'm
I
sorry.
figured you may know what it says.
Absolutely. So the red line, those are all mulched trails. The blue line, those are 8-foot wide concrete trails. So that's just primarily located along Weathers Creek. And then the orange is all of the pedestrian sidewalks that are located throughout the entire neighborhood. So all of the proposed public streets in the neighborhood are all going to have landscape strips with trees and pedestrian scale lighting, and also sidewalks as well on both sides of the street. So there's going to be ample opportunity for people to just walk right out their front door and to be able to get where they're going. Thank you for that question. So on site, we did bring in a wetland consultant to go out and do an investigation of what environmental features are on site, what are actually going to be considered jurisdictional waters of the United States. We have identified those areas. We are protecting those areas. We have designed the neighborhood in a way that would not impact the jurisdictional waters and the wetlands on site. So just wanted to show a slide that this is a step that we have taken. We have identified those areas, and this is the result of that investigation. One of the interesting development conditions that we have incorporated into this project, as I previously mentioned, a lot of this land is farmland and lacks trees today. Well, of course, we've committed to doing streetscape, trees along the street, and then also each individual lot will commit to planting 2 more trees on their lot at the time of construction being completed. So it may be 2 trees in the front yard, a tree in the front, a tree in the side, or a tree in the backyard. So over time, this will provide a nice green canopy as these trees continue to grow in, and it will feel like it was not one day mass graded. In 10 or 15 years, it will really start feeling like a nice mature community with the amount of trees that are being planted here. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the core amenity area. It includes pool deck, a tot lot pool, cabana areas, playgrounds, programmed and unprogrammed green space, and associated parking, but also all of the community greenway trails that I had previously noted will all lead to this. This will be a core nodal area for all of those walking paths to connect to. Now, one item that we had been coordinating with staff is there an opportunity here to provide Troutman the opportunity to have a park, to have some type of opportunity for a programmed space within this amenity area. And we have shown that here. And since the pointer's not working, I'm going to go ahead and point this out. So within the amenity area, there is a 3/4 of an acre parcel that has been indicated on this map directly adjacent to the public street. This parcel has the opportunity to be dedicated over to the town of Troutman for a designated park for public use. We can get into a little bit more details if you have any questions regarding that, but it provided an opportunity for the town of Troutman to have a program space for soccer or other types of community events that may not be able to occur here since it's a little further away from the core downtown area. A couple of the ideas that have come up in discussions have been the potential for maybe a farmer's market, craft market, or soccer fields for youth soccer, or any other type of programmatic efforts that the town may see fit. It would essentially be town property one day, and that change of ownership would occur at the time of platting of the overall community. So again, if we have any questions about that or want to talk through that, we certainly can after this presentation. So there have been some changes that have occurred related to the traffic impact analysis, the traffic impact study. This is a map that is showing the overall scoping area and all of the intersections that have been studied within the TIA. Randy Goddard with DRG is here. Randy, would you like to speak for a couple minutes about kind of the progression of what's occurred with the TIA in the past few months?
Thank you. Randy Goddard with Design Resource Group. We prepared the traffic study for the Shin property, and the initial one we sent to NCDOT, and what happened was they reviewed it and then decided they had forgot about a STIP project for the realignment of Flower Loop to Houston and 21. So we revised the document, sent it back in, and they provided comments and basically listed out the items that Lynn had indicated as far as the roadway improvements that the district office had recommended. Now, those are not the same as congestion management. Congestion management is the arm of NCDOT that reviews traffic studies in Raleigh. So you have the engineers sitting in cubicles reviewing, they make recommendations and they leave it up to the district engineer to make the final recommendations. So they provided those, and again, there's not a final approved traffic study yet, but they've come back with those comments on the latest traffic study. So if you have any questions on that, I'll be happy to touch on that now or even later during the discussion.
Congested, what, have they made a final decision on that yet?
So congestion management,
You're talking to, I understood two different situations here. Congestion management, though, is one that I'd like to hear about specifically.
congestion management made a list of recommendations, but their recommendations are to the district office. Then it's up to the district office to decide, are those realistic or not realistic? And which ones make sense to them, because again, they just look through the study and decide, not decide, but they make recommendations to the district office. So I've been doing this a long time. District is the one that really knows what's going on, not the individuals in Raleigh. They don't even come out here and look at anything. They just look at the document and provide comments. And that's all they've done. So the list that Lynn had are the recommendations from the actual district office, the district engineer, here locally related to that traffic study.
That's what's showing in our packet,
Correct.
the
Yes,
district
yes.
managers.
Well, yes, sir. We had conversations with both congestion management and the district office. And I was under the impression that the two had talked about those requested improvements. And that email did come from the district office, though. That is correct. But
So
I was
that's
under
the final recommendations, correct?
That's
Which are a
the-
list of 5 items that Lynn's already shared.
The 5 plus the donation, section 12.
Well, the donation is not, that is not coming from NCDOT,
I mean,
no, sir.
You listed in number 12 here in this package you gave us today.
The 5, that's
5
correct.
was
Mhm,
and
yes.
then the other is the last one.
Correct. That's something that the applicant, will need to discuss with you all.
Is it appropriate for me to ask another question, or wait till the gentleman finishes, then ask a question?
Oh, you can ask.
Very concerned and a little disappointed that I'm not seeing any improvements, and I realize, there's a paragraph following those 5 conditions that addresses future development under R57, was 22, the STIP project. But again, is there anything going to be done after the 100th or 150th COO is issued to improve that intersection there, Houston Road and 21, Powerhouse Loop?
So NCDOT is putting in a signal and actually doing turn lanes at that intersection as part of the STIP project.
You might, I don't know, Mr. White, you want to?
We will both try to help clarify or answer Mayor Pro Tem's question. The realignment of Houston Road and Flower House Loop is already targeted, and even though there'll be some impact here, as we have told 2 other developers when it came to that intersection, instead of somebody going and doing the actual improvement, per your question of, once this happens, let's do that improvement then, we have to follow the state's guidelines on when they're going to do that realignment. So instead of doing that, they deposit their money so that intersection can be fixed appropriately at one time, instead of one developer, for an example, having a 150-foot turning lane, another one having to come back and add 100 foot more to that one, and it would just be piecemealed if everybody did their part at a certain key point. So following the state's recommendations, we had been collecting pools of money from other developers that once the state does that project, then all that money will be put forth to do the realignment. So it's not, per the state's request, not that they wanted us to say, just like your question, well, if you build 150 houses, we want to see this done at that particular intersection. That one, unlike the others, is already on the state's plan to address. These other conditions that were pointed out, that is not currently on the state plan. That's why they're making the recommendation that the developer do those.
And again, I hope I'm trying not to get off on a tangent here because I know we're discussing a specific, but any idea of when this 5722 would take place?
I believe they're in right-of-way right now, acquiring right-of-way, and it's scheduled to start construction in 2024, so next year.
That is correct.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, does it work? Oh, look at that. You're holding that one.
I know.
So this is a wire diagram of the traffic improvement recommendations that are being made by NCDOT related to the project. We can get into these in a bit more detail if you'd like when we get into questions, but we do have a thorough understanding of specifically what NCDOT is requesting associated with this development at this time. Oh, there, well. So just to provide a quick timeline of how this petition has progressed in the previous months. So we had our community meet, sorry, there's a little bit of a formatting problem here that might have happened during the email process today. Our petitioning community meeting was held on August 9th. We had planning board in October. We had a couple of deferrals that occurred in December and January. I would like to thank you for offering those deferrals to us so we could speak with you today. And then today is our council vote. So at this time, that actually wraps up our presentation, and we can go ahead and start answering any questions that you all may have. And again, thank you for your time tonight to make the presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Parnell, any other questions for the applicant?
I have a question, I guess, since I don't think Lynn quite answered that question. Number 6 and that number point 12 that we go today. Are you going to be donating the $150,000 towards that improvement at Houston Road?
So I think that's something that we probably need to address that's a healthy discussion point for tonight. Scott, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Mr. Mayor, Council, good evening. My name is Scott Monday. I'm with NVR Ryan Homes, and if you'll permit me, I would like to pass out at this time language that we recommend to replace the existing note number 12 language that speaks to the TIA, if that's okay. May I do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
The language that you see in red was included in our rezoning submittal. And since the time of that submittal, we've become aware of NCDOT shifting focus and geographic shifting of focus for improvements relating to this project. Lynn pointed out a number of those in her earlier presentation. We've drafted language that we feel captures that to where once this TIA is finalized, what we're saying is we're committing to constructing the improvements that are required by NCDOT at the final approved TIA. Okay? And so I think this language, in lieu of listing out those intersections, reflects that wherever this TIA ends up from an approval standpoint, that's the improvements we'll make. We've not yet had a chance to fully review the recommended intersections with NCDOT. But one of the things which we would like to do, and wherever that settles out, that's what we're committed to doing, okay? So one of the things I'd like to point out is that when DOT began to shift from the prior improvements, which were all at the Houston Road, as we've discussed, and we had indicated that we would make those improvements, that was what was recommended to us, or make a payment in lieu of constructing those improvements, as the town manager indicated. It could be a construction mess out there. Some folks are constructing, later date, things have to be torn up, et cetera. That's not very efficient. So being aware of that, NCDOT has asked us to stand down from improvements in that area, as that's a fully funded project now. And in lieu of that construction in that area, which you see in the red on the sheet I passed out, they're focusing on areas that are closer to the project itself. So they're basically saying, we were over here, now we're over here. So the $150,000 that was discussed at the planning board level and the fee in lieu had to do with, in lieu of constructing the improvements at US 21 in Houston. So what we're doing instead of that now, what we're proposing is constructing the improvements that will be finalized within the proximity of the project itself, just a different location. So instead of funding the, providing the fee in lieu, we would be actually constructing improvements in a different location. Is that?
In other words, you're not giving the donation help that 21 issue, which is going to be a big problem with the development going out that way. That, and I think we had talked, I know Pernell and I talked before, is that those are areas that, you know, we needed to make sure we can get the best product, and that was the one thing the dollars are going to help, that they get all the alignment and everything done, and not piecemeal.
That's correct, and NCDOT let us know that that was a fully funded project. And so what they've asked us to do was focus on improvements elsewhere. So it's not as though we're dropping the 150, we're actually spending probably more money, well, you know, actually considerably more money in another location, other locations, other turn lanes, at the direction of DOT. So this is really at the direction of DOT.
I have a question.
Sure.
Forgive me, this is the first time I've seen this list here, but maybe Lynn, you could help me out, or Director Hare, my apologies. The A, B, and C in red, which all focus around 21, right? How did those align with? I mean, that's the thing. We've seen this intersection targeted, just like you said, many times with developers. You know, so how do these recommendations align with what we've already had come before council?
Basically, as the applicant just said, when they started this process, that was DOT's recommendation to them and discussions with staff that there be funding of that intersection. However, now that it has taken this long and they've looked at the overall project, again, with staff input, they had decided that that project at Houston and Flower House was fully funded. So once that was fully funded, they then said, well, we need improvements elsewhere. And as the applicant said, it's not that they're not wanting to fulfill their obligation. DOT has changed their requirements of what they initially thought. And as Lynn said, and I'll be glad to pass the microphone back to her, Director Hare, typically when we get to this point, all the applicant says or the conditions are approved with all TIAs met. And that's basically the language that the applicant has offered to say, we're going to do everything the TIA says. He's not backing up on anything that they thought they were going to do. It actually now costs them a lot more money to make these other improvements at the other intersections. You want to add?
Yeah, I'm not defensive here. I'm just trying.
Sure,
to
no, absolutely. It's a complicated, yeah.
And
Hey,
I
I'm kind of 8 o'clock. You know,
Yeah.
And just to kind of simplify, I think what the applicant is requesting is then rather than us be so specific in the condition, because what we've got written in there now is exact improvements, that 1 through 5, is that he would like to replace that with the language that he has here in black at the bottom of the page, which doesn't in any way, as the manager stated, prevent him from making any improvements. It just leaves it open to whatever the TIA and I think an NCDOT will require. So if something were to change, because sometimes these things are fluid, that it would leave that door open. So I think that's what the request is.
Right,
And we paid the price, button heads with DOT on the requested improvements. I totally understand that verbiage.
And this is something that we have done in other CZs. Like I said, a lot of times at this level, DOT hasn't had an opportunity to even review the TIA yet. So this is a condition that we do place on CZs that gives us the security that the applicant will provide any improvements that are required by the TIA and DOT.
Okay. So again, I don't mean to dominate here, but just my last question. You said, okay, so instead of the, we'll say, $150K over here, you're going to spend substantially more over here. So just my kind of, I guess, make it make sense question is, why wouldn't you have had to spend that money there anyway?
I'm not sure I understand,
Like
sorry.
if you're saying, okay, so we're going to need, I'm assuming, I'm looking at maybe page 5, where I see a lot of turn lane here, Houston Road, Weathers Creek, a lot of road improvements in that area.
Right, I think
Would
that-
those not be required?
No, I think the answer for that is NCDOT just shifted its focus from where we were when the focus was, at Houston and US 21. That was the focus before.
Okay.
And in lieu of that project being funded, focus over here, it's a shift. So that's what we're doing.
And to add to the
The problem
applicant's,
I have is they're not in the room. Right, I guess.
Sorry.
I may can shed some light on that, but to add to what the applicant answered, we as staff, as you all as elected officials, have had a few individuals reach out with their concerns of traffic in other areas, and they have, based off of whether it be radio shows or our conversation in meetings, several of them have also started contacting DOT when they're aware of these projects. And we are aware that many citizens did reach out, and that might have helped them reshift their focus.
So, just from your point, the statement that Scott said, the 21 Flower House Loop, Houston Road piece is fully funded by DOT at this point.
That is correct.
And so that's why they pushed them out to do those areas, which I remember the planning, they pointed out why we're not looking at those roads.
Correct.
And that was the one, I think, from the planning group. But so I just want to make sure that we're getting 21 Houston Road, Flower House Loop, that piece fully funded. That's my concern. And you're assuring me that it's going to happen.
If we can trust those powers that told us, yes, I'm relaying the message.
So I'm going to tell them, duck White said.
Well, the only thing I would say about that, Mr. Harris, is when we go to CRTPO, when we're talking about the STIP, then we need to make sure it's on the list.
Okay,
Right,
I'll
and
be
it's-
sure
we
to.
always need to check that one off, because every time we see that list, it
Yes.
needs to be there, right? So,
And that's what I'm picking up on, like with the CRTP, because we have to get in that little grouping where DOT will do
that's
the final
correct.
step.
It's on there now, but we just need to make sure it
Okay.
stays.
And that's what I wanted, really, is I was looking at the different comments, we've had over time. It's, we were putting money there and then we're not, but then we were in this thing today, so I'm like, okay, what are we doing? And that's what, I just want to make sure that's fully funded, because I think that's probably the most important piece, is that tie out here on 21 versus the rural roads out there as compared to that.
I agree with you as staff, yes, sir. Well, and that is my concern. I mean, the two favorite words of DOT is postpone and delay. That's the two favorite words, and that's been, since I was a child living in North Carolina, has been their legacy, and it continues. And I'm sorry if I stepped on toes, but it's just the truth. I've seen it in the years I've been on. I can't remember one time they made a promise that they stuck to, literally. They maybe eventually got around to it sometimes, but it was always a delay and always a postponement. And it's very frustrating, and that's as Councilman Harris said, it's been a frustration, and we want to make sure that at least that area on Highway 21, the most visible area, the most visible area. You know, it's kind of like if you've got a broken pipe underground and a pothole on the surface, you're probably going to hear more about that pothole than that
Right.
pipe underground
Agreed.
that's got a crack in it. So obviously that's going to be the most visible. That's what we're going to hear the most of, and I don't blame them. I mean, we've got to drive it too, and so forth. So that's what I'm most concerned about, and that's why I bring it up. But I want to ask while I'm talking, is there any reason that we cannot possibly change the time or the schedule, the timing on these improvements to the 100th CO as opposed to the 150th?
I was just getting ready to address the second sentence and a little bit of background there. So the TIA timeline, if you will, per se, within the TIA would have had the commencement of these improvements occurring in something like the 300s at the end of phase one, about half the project. And the planning board requested that we move that up. That was one of its requests at planning board. And so we agreed to accelerate that from, I think it was 350 to the 150th CO. And so that's the background. So when we're proposing this is just to be consistent with the planning board recommendation at that time. I was just getting ready to mention that one.
Yeah. May I, kind of deviate from planning board's request, 100? Would that be possible without creating an onerous barrier for you?
I think we're prepared to agree to that in the spirit of all that we're doing here.
Can we, whoever's keeping the list here, add that, please? Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir.
I just have one more, I'm not gonna talk about traffic again, okay? I see that most everything, even from the community meeting, planning and zoning, has been addressed, except for the bridge.
That is a project that DOT they are going to be widening that bridge. And I believe that's going to be happening in the next couple years, from what what we've been told.
It is not on a step that we are aware of yet. However, it is being engineered to do that.
Thank you.
And I would say that'd be another one that Mr. Harris and I need to probably carry the water a little bit on to make sure we bring that up. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Sure, I do. I'm just going to make the edit of the 100.
If no other questions for the applicant, at this time, I will ask if there's anyone here from the public who would like to speak on this request.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to talk. My name is Richard Perona. I live in Sanders Ridge, which is directly connected on the west side to the Shin Farms development area.
Mr. Richard, will you please sign in?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Which, I'm not sure which, there's a pen. There's two forms here. Let's see, sign in sheet, okay.
It says public hearing.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not against development. I know this area is going to be developed. We knew when we moved in there it was going to be developed. I'm for planned and consistent development. We moved here from Arizona at a town that grew from 10,000 to 300,000. It was well managed. It was well planned out. It had good infrastructure. It was recognized for good planning. So I know this is going to happen. I'm just looking to make sure that we have good planning and good infrastructure for this. Regarding the TIA, and I've read through this, and to the best of my, as I can read it, what it indicates is in 2020, it was noted that there are 850 vehicles per day on Houston and Weathers Creek, and 1,800 at Houston and US 21. Now in 2030, the TIA says it's going to be triple at Westmoreland and Houston. But that's really focused on not the increase of traffic, but it seems, from my reading, to be focused on the delays in the morning and the afternoon. And that's where the turn lanes come into play. I want to look at the overall traffic. What it says is there's going to be an addition of 10,000 vehicle trips per day between Shin Farms, Westmoreland Village, and a couple of other communities that are being built on past Weathers Creek. I forget where they are. So that's quite a large increase. Even if 5,000 of those are on Houston Road, which is about half, that brings that up to about 6,000 to 7,000 vehicles per day on Houston Road, which is about 8 times what the TIA says are currently at Houston and Weathers Creek. And in fact, that comes out to about half of what US 21 has at Interstate 77. So we're looking at 2030, half of the US 21 traffic being on Houston Road. I go on Houston Road as I leave my subdivision. That is a very dangerous road. There's been accidents at Sugar Hill Road, which is where, Round Rock, where Sanders Ridge exits onto Houston Road. And I'm guessing there will be quite a few more. It's a narrow road, narrower than US 21. We tend to get run off the road by dump trucks and all the construction vehicles coming through there, or even just delivery vehicles. They're often, because it's curvy, they're often going over the center line and forcing you right to the edge. And I can only see that getting worse as these developments increase. We also pointed out, because I was at the community meeting and I was at the P&Z meeting, pointed out that Shepherd and Westmoreland at US 21 are going to be have a lot more traffic. If we're talking 10,000 more vehicle trips a day from these subdivisions, a good number of those, if 5,000 go down Houston, probably the other 5,000 are going to go down Shepherd Road and Westmoreland to get to US 21. They have stop signs. They already have a long wait, and I can just see that getting worse when you start adding 5,000 more vehicle trips a day there. Another issue is the consistency with the area. Now, it's noted that it's about 2.1 units per acre, but I consider that to be somewhat misleading. It was pointed out at the Planning and Zoning meeting by one of the commissioners who voted against this rezoning, that there's a lot of unused land, and that unusable land is factored into that. So we're going from quarter-acre plus lots in Sanders Ridge, even larger lots than that in Colonial Mills that are just across the street, across Houston Road, and we're going to lots that are anywhere from 6,200 to about 9,000 square feet. So we're going from Sanders Ridge, you go around, there's a, excuse me?
It's 3 minutes time. You crossed your time.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not know I had 3 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
He's got more time.
I'm sorry. Anyway, I understand you can't have the same size lots everywhere, but I believe there needs to be some transition. Most importantly for us in Sanders Ridge is there is one exit out of this to Houston Road, and there are 3 out to Weathers Creek. Most of those houses, if I may go over here, this is the exit out to Houston Road. This is Sanders Ridge right here. Most of these houses are going to be closer going out through Sanders Ridge than they are to come out this way to go out to Houston Road. And that road, this road says proposed to be connected, but it is not connected here. I believe it's really unacceptable for a subdivision to be designed and developed so that another subdivision is a doormat to that area. It was noted in the TIA that it would probably double the traffic on Sugar Hill Road, which is where Sanders Ridge connects up to it. I believe that's not really correct. There's about 30 houses north of that currently, that connector road, and it looks like there's probably about 100 or so that would be using Sugar Hill Road to come through. Certainly not what we expected when we bought there, we understand there's a connector road, but not that that was going to be a prime exit out of a new subdivision. Now, the developer has agreed to block that off during construction, but once construction's completed, then that road will be open for all those people that go through our neighborhood instead of going through, their own exit. And there's also a potential school connection, although I believe that is still not to be connected, right? Okay. Okay. So I think Houston needs to be widened. I think that should have been included. And I believe that this should have another exit onto Houston Road besides going through Sanders Ridge. It really, for the amount of people there, they shouldn't be going through some other subdivision, but through there. 5 minutes. Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Jim McNiff. I had a quick question. I seem to recall from my days on the Planning and Zoning Board here in the town that when we were dealing with developments the size of this and with the routing that there are for the streets internally, that typically the police chief and the fire marshal have been consulted, that they are comfortable that they are able to access problems that may arise either of a policing nature or a fire nature, and was wondering if that has been a consideration here.
Staff.
Fire marshal has to review in all instances. And with respect to Mr. McNiff, I'm not aware of that ever including the police chief, but it certainly does require the fire marshal's office for the county to sign off.
All right, anyone else like to comment on this rezoning request? Okay. Council, you've heard from staff and the applicant as well as the public on this rezoning request. I will now close this public hearing. Before we consider approval of ordinance 3322, I would ask that we go back to the annexation request and open that public hearing back up as it was delayed upon the motion of Mr. Hinkle. And I will turn it over to Ms. Hare.
Yes, this is a request to annex the property that we are considering rezoning for Shin Farms. It is the whole 276 acres. The owners are John and Robert Shin. Currently, it's in the county zoned RA. If annexed, we will bring this in conditionally zoned to RM.
Thank you, Ms. Hare. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the annexation request as presented? Okay. Any questions by council on the annexation? Okay. Hearing none, I will close the annexation public hearing. At this time, council will consider approval of ordinance 3122 titled "An Ordinance Extending the Corporate Limits of the Town of Troutman Non-Contiguous." Is there a motion regarding this ordinance?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance 3122, titled "An Ordinance to Extend the Corporate Limits of the Town of Troutman, North Carolina, Non-Contiguous."
Okay. Motion's on the floor to approve ordinance 3122. Is there a second?
I will second.
Motion's made, receive the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. That will take us to the next item, which is consideration for the approval of ordinance 3322, titled "An Ordinance Changing the Zoning Classification of the After Described Property from Idaho County Residential Agricultural to Town of Troutman Conditional Zoning Mixed Use Residential, known as CZRM 2209 Shin Farms." Before we consider that, I would ask that the applicant agrees that they consent to the conditions contained in the proposed ordinance, as well as those we covered tonight.
Right, assuming as amended as we presented? Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
The applicant has agreed to the conditions. Is there a motion to consider the approval of ordinance 3322?
Mr. Mayor, may I ask one question of either Scott or Paul? What would be your answer, what is your answer to the gentleman who spoke from Sanders Ridge a minute or two ago concerning relocation or addition of ingress, egress of your development so that it would relieve some of the traffic, using Sanders Ridge as a drive-through, as to get to Houston or Weathers Creek? What would be your answer?
Well, one of the benefits for planning and working with Troutman staff has been anticipating future development. Sanders Ridge has a stub to this proposed development, anticipating those future vehicular connections. Interconnectivity for pedestrians and interconnectivity for vehicles is a public benefit. Providing those alternative methods to get around a community is essentially and fundamentally a good thing. We in our development are showing, and Lynn, you might want to go to our rezoning site plan. We are showing, just as Sanders Ridge did when it was planned out years ago, we're showing those future stubs as well, anticipating the need for people in their cars and people walking throughout the community to want to get from point A to point B a little easier. Those interconnected networks are beneficial. The connections that we're showing, there's an existing one on Sanders Ridge stubbing to this property line today. We're showing and paying homage to that connection that was shown years ago. One benefit that we are providing Sanders Ridge is, in a development condition, we're showing barriers at that location to prevent any construction traffic from going through this neighborhood as it's under construction through Sanders Ridge, which we think is, well, let's just face it, no one wants red dirt in their streets. So I think that's a positive benefit for them for the next few years as this development comes online. We're also showing additional stubs that will eventually make their way to Houston. So as these parcels along Houston, there are public road stubs that will be platted to provide residents of Sanders Ridge in this development alike additional options for connecting to Houston Road. We've got the main connection here to Houston Road, and then we have a third that's setting up a connection to Houston Road as well on this side. On the opposite side of Weathers Creek, we have two stubs that are setting up for a potential development on this side. And also, it's not connecting across Weathers Creek, but this actually opens up an opportunity here for all of these, as they come online, to be interconnected and to provide those opportunities for if there is an accident, heaven forbid on Weathers Creek, for neighbors to still be able to get around, for emergency vehicles to still be able to get around and access these homes. So while it may feel like a good idea to just isolate your community, I think as time goes on, those interconnectivity and that vehicular connection is fundamentally a public benefit. And I mean, Lynn, if you would like to maybe speak up, being the planning director, I think there's something worth speaking about here.
Sure. Well, I do want to point out that our ordinance requires the connection. That stub is in Sanders Ridge for this very reason, just as they are providing stubs to vacant land. And I think one of the things, I don't know, the gentleman said at the community there in Arizona that was well planned. I think connectivity is a big part of planning well. I think it helps to relieve traffic issues, traffic problems, congestion. It helps when people have alternatives to get around in an area. So that's why the ordinance is calling for this connection.
Of course.
In addition to that, going back to what Mr. McNiff asked, as he lightly touched on, that's also a state fire marshal thing when neighborhoods are beside each other for emergencies, evacuations, and those type things.
All right, we will consider approval of ordinance 3322. Is there a motion regarding this ordinance?
I will so move, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion on the floor to approve ordinance 3322. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Motion is made, received a second. Any other question or comment? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The next item would be a statement of consistency. I would ask that you read that statement of consistency.
You all right?
I'll read it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I make this motion regarding consistency of this action, that the rezoning is consistent with the Troutman strategic plan and the future land use map as it will serve to guide residential development in the scale and density prescribed in those policy documents by allowing appropriate medium-density residential development and their customary accessory uses. Finally, the requested rezoning is considered reasonable and in the public interest as it proposes to allow the retention of residential development in the areas of Troutman where it is appropriate.
There's a motion on the floor regarding our statement of consistency. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion is made, received a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is public comments. The public is invited to address the council with any comments directed toward the council. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per individual. Speakers are asked to sign in at the podium and abide by Town Policy 51. Is there anyone here who would like to address the council regarding any public comments?
I wasn't sure who was leading and who was talking.
Understood.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm still Jim McNiff.
Did you sign in?
I expect by now you've all received your letters from Ardell County with regard to new real estate assessments. And we've heard stories from our friends and neighbors about increases of 25, 50, even more to the values of people's properties. And there's an appeal process that the county has that everyone can avail themselves of if they feel they've been done wrong by the reassessment. I know that that's not in your direct purview, but it has an indirect bearing on this town in the sense that for those of us who do live in the town of Troutman and pay taxes here, those taxes are premised on two pieces of information. The first is that aforementioned assessed value of our real estate. The second is the millage rate, which currently stands at 0.52 per $100 of value. A little bit of history. My understanding is that in January of 2016, the millage rate in the town was increased to its current level of 0.52, and the explanation that was given to us was that the prior town administration had pretty much left the coffers bare with regard to a reserve fund. And we know that the state requires that 8% of your annual revenue be set aside in a general reserve fund. At that same meeting, I asked the question of whether or not, once that 8% had been achieved, if we would roll back the tax rate. No one was able to answer. In subsequent years, I came back and I asked the same question and got the same answer that I did that first year. No answer. I read the 2022 audit of this town, and we now have a general reserve fund of 77%, more than 9 times what is required by the state. And I appreciate the fact that it's good to have a rainy day fund because unexpected expenses will arise. But those same unexpected expenses don't arise just for this town, but they also arise in the daily lives of the people who live in this town and pay taxes in this town. And what you have done, and having run that number up to 77%, is to take money out of our pockets and put it into the town's pocket. It's not fair. It's not right. You could have and should have adjusted the millage rate previously. There was no reason why this has grown to 77%. To put that number in perspective,
Thank you.
that's been 3 minutes?
Yeah, you're on the roll.
Okay, I'll cut to the chase here. Okay, we've got approximately $4.3 million in our general reserve fund. Last year, from all of the taxes that were collected in this town, amounted to approximately $3.4 million. If in this coming year you collected no taxes from anybody in this town, and instead drew those funds out of the general reserve fund, you would still have a reserve fund of approximately 15% and 2 times what is required by the state. I'm asking you to think about your citizens who not only are dealing with a reassessment, but they've dealt with inflation of 7% in 2021, 6.5% in 2022, and it's still above 6%.
Thank you, Mr.
You can do the right thing here. It's time to do it.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the council?
Mayor, council members, my name is Tom McGraw. I've not appeared before you, but my wife and I are new to the community, and I'd like to address the issue that Mr. McNiff has touched on. I'll say at the outset, my experience with municipal government and governance is limited to the 4 months that I've now spent on my HOA. My point being, I'm no expert, but I'd just like to offer a few observations. I suspect no one knows better than you do that your revenue needs aren't tied to the value of the real estate in the community. If the real estate goes up 25%, you've still got to run this town, and your revenue needs presumably are not hugely different, and there's quite a windfall that comes from that 25% increase. On the other hand, if your valuations go down 25%, you then find that your revenues have gone down 25%, but your cost of running the town remains the same. I'm not familiar with that millage rate, but I'm assuming that's the tax rate. That tax rate gives you the ability, when revenues are down, to adjust and make sure that your revenue, what you need, is still there. I'm not suggesting that you ought to be changing the tax rate every year as things move here and there, but it feels like we've been in an unusual period of time in terms of increases in valuation. And it feels like there has almost been or will be a windfall associated with this reassessment. And it feels to me, consistent with what Mr. McNiff has said, that it feels right that maybe there should be an adjustment and not make the reappraisal such an economic windfall. You need to do what you need to do as stewards of the town, and you need your revenue, but it feels to me like those revenues are going to be unusually expanded as a result of the reappraisal. And like Mr. McNiff, I would ask you to consider the possibility of backing that millage rate off. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the council?
30 seconds.
Hi, my name is Don Von Ruden, and my bride Don and I moved here 10 years ago, and I only came here to support the two gentlemen that came before me. They said it all, so I'm just going to say amen, and there's a whole bunch of folks in this community that I've talked to in the last week that feel the same way, so just please consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sign in. Oh, right here?
Public
Should be on the left, yes, sir.
Oh, right here, sorry. My first time doing this.
You're good, thank you.
Anyone else like to address the council? Any comment? All right, thank you. At this time, we will move to our next item, which is comments from council and myself and the staff. I will start with our council members. I'll start to my left, Mr. Harris.
Okay. I'd just like to, again, congratulate our Bobcat cheerleaders and glad that we had them here tonight. I watched them Monday night trying to get our boys to the championship, but we came up about 8 points short in the game. But these girls did a lot of, you can see why they were the winners in the cheerleading competition. They did a good job out there for us. Enjoyed that and glad to see we recognized them. The other one is that I'd like to thank the town manager and his team of seeing the need to have these Employee of the Month. I think that's a great way to recognize we got some really good employees and gives a chance each month to recognize one of them. I did appreciate all that. And then I would say that I also got my reassessment the other day and was not very happy. So, what they say has a little bit that I would ask the town finance director to look at those options if we have any of those to give people a little break. Because, I mean, I saw mine double and I'm still not too happy about it.
Mr. Down?
Yes, I would also like to address our citizens that addressed us with looking at the lowering the rate is something we probably need to look at and talk about it and maybe consider it. So I appreciate the gentlemen with their three of them speaking. Also, our thoughts and prayers is with our fellow Councilwoman Felina Harris, and also I'd like to let the people that weren't here on Monday or weren't listening, myself and Councilman Harris and Town Manager Wyatt went up to Raleigh and met with our senator, our state senator, and our state representatives about our infrastructure and our park. And it was very successful. Hopefully, there'll be some fruits of our meetings and some other meetings that we go up and see them with some help from Raleigh. So I appreciate it that we went up there with Councilman Harris and Town Manager Wyatt. But we will definitely consider and talk about what you gentlemen talked about tonight. Thank you.
Mr. Archer?
I'd like to start with a question. When does the county commission meet? Do we know that information?
First and third Tuesday of each month.
Yeah.
First and third Tuesday of each month. The line might be longer, but I think they need to hear some of that as well.
Do we only get 3 minutes here as well?
I would assume.
I would assume that's correct.
Yes. Likewise, yeah, the recognitions were great. It was great to acknowledge the cheerleaders, what a great job they did, as well as Mr. Jewett. Anybody that spent 2 minutes with the guy sees what kind of energy he brings. So it was great. It was great to see him. Great to see him get acknowledged. Also, as my fellow council members know, I am the Central Lina delegate for the town of Troutman. And last night, even though I was the delegate for last year, had the first in-person meeting, so I consider that to be my first meeting of Central Lina. And it was very, very productive. It was a great meeting. But not only that, the conversations I was able to have that you cannot have over Zoom, and the interactions, I'm looking forward to hopefully, becoming more involved with Central Lina and seeing what we can do, what we can bring. They ask for, they ask. That's what they do. They don't tell. They said, just give us what you have and let us help you. So I think that's something that, we can, as a town, can leverage a lot more. And I will gladly, do what I can and bring back to Troutman whatever, we can get, from that organization. So, yeah, it was a good experience. And that's all.
Mr. Hinkle?
Well, I'm gonna focus generally on what the gentleman, very well put. And, like Mr. Harris, mine's double. And that's, what I'm gonna pay, if the rate stays the same, both county and, town. So, again, I know firsthand what you're talking about. But I do want to correct one thing. There's a feeling that somehow we're just kind of collecting money for the fun of it, gloating and so forth, but that's not the situation. The town engineer and our town manager could probably better put this and be specific, but we've got needs now and that are upcoming. And Eddie mentioned this, infrastructure that we are preparing for. And, it's kind of the rainy day fund that we got a big rainy day coming. We've got developments that, yes, developers are putting in their infrastructure themselves, but again, we're having to maintain, and we're having to run lines to these places in some cases, and we've got to prepare for the future. And when I say infrastructure, it's not only water and sewer, but obviously town streets, maintaining parks and the services that people have come to expect and need. And all of that takes money, but the biggest thing is the infrastructure. And it is the collection and going from being under to well over target of 8%, as Jim mentioned, is not a desire to be like the old Milburn Drysdale or the old Beverly Hillbillies. You may remember those, old enough to remember the TV show where he would sit in the vault during lunch and play money. All he'd rather need, he'd cover himself in money, and it's not our desire to do that. It's our desire to take that money and make sure it's there when, along with the grants and low interest loans we hope to get from the state, and sometimes federal government by way of the state, to help us pay for these things. And as so eloquently put, inflation is there and it's going to continue. It may hopefully slow down, but it's still always going to be there. So cost of these future projects are continuously going up, and we have to allow for that. What's today is not going to be what 5 years from now, when some of these things are having and need to be done. We can plan, but then at some point you have to go from planning to action. And we need to make sure we have enough funds to cover this. It's vital. I can't think of any more outcry than someone to turn on their faucet and nothing happened, flush their toilet and nothing happened, as well as the streets that are not well kept, and again, as I said, good potable water, as well as a good elimination of your wastewater. So all these things, in planning with regional plans and agreements with our municipalities to the north and south, Mooresville and Statesville, we have to run lines to them, and as those lines become full, we have to either expand them or run a parallel line, whether it's water or sewer for treatment. And so all these things, we have to plan for, and we have to build up that rainy day fund. And right now, yes, it's flush. But believe me, one project could be 4 or 5 million. That I think 4 million was thrown out a while ago. That could be eaten up in one large project. Say with Mooresville or with Statesville. These are things that, believe me, the costs, I've heard, 15, 16 million if all needs were met, and taken care of, and not on planning for today, but for the future. And Mr. Town Manager, feel free to, when I finish here, to step in, because as I say, you work daily with our town engineer, and you know these things, more specifically in terms of cost than I do. I'm just generally speaking here, but believe me, you know, the accumulation that we've done has not been for the fun of it, believe me. It's not been for the fun of it. There has been a need in mind that we're slowly building each year more and more, you know, and we're going to have to continue to do that. Now, having said that, that does not mean that, you know, when you know, the tax bills that, and we do the budget, that it's still going to be 52 cents. No, that doesn't mean that. I don't know what's going to be. We'll see what it is that works out, and obviously we're going to try and give the people some relief. But the people also have to keep in mind that we still have the bills to pay, which are continually going up. The gentleman mentioned sometimes revenues are down, sometimes they're up. Well, those bills seem to be almost constant, and one other constant thing is that they also are going up. So we have to allow for that as well. So there is a method to our madness, and it's not any kind of ego trip to see how much wealth we can accumulate for the town. Believe me. Again, I pay taxes just like you folks do, and I don't enjoy it any more than you folks do on any level of government, federal, state, or local. So with that, I'll pass it on to the mayor.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate the Troutman Middle School students being here. I do think it's important that we continue to recognize our students for what they do, both in the classroom and outside the classroom, to keep them active and productive in our community. The old saying, "They are our future," still holds, and it's good to see parents who are engaged and community members who continue to engage with them. Prayers go out to Councilwoman Harris and her family for the loss that they are experiencing, and hopefully they will find some comfort during this time of need. I would also like to, as usual, thank the staff for the great work that they've done over the last month, and appreciate, again, keeping the town clean, looking appropriate. But as Mr. Hinkle said earlier, even Public Works keeping quality water flowing through our town, making sure that we turn on that faucet and water continues to flow. There are places in this country where that's not the case. Again, I want to say appreciate all that our Public Works Department does. We've got some exciting things going on in a lot of departments, whether it's our park. I know the work that planning continues to do. I know people assume that the town drums up all of these different projects. That is not the case. These projects come to us, and you all do a great job of managing that. And even from an HR perspective, again, I appreciate Lou continuing the work on our HR front and all the other things that you do that I'm aware of. And again, I appreciate that. And Justin, you don't escape. You continue to come up in conversations and managing our finances as we're discussing even here tonight. But again, appreciate you. Feels like yesterday when you joined, and it seems like you were drinking out of a water hose, but I think you got a little bit more hold on it than you did before. So again, appreciate that. Chief, thank you, and the officers for what you continue to do. I see more of the patrols going on different parts of the town, and again, reducing that speed and traffic. I've not been one of them yet, so again, but I appreciate what they do, and their visibility out there is recognized. So again, please give them our appreciation. Kim, thanks for all you do to kind of keep us straight on all of our documentation every day, and I don't think we thank you enough, but clearly we ask a lot of changes and so forth. So again, thank you, and Emily and the team on Parks and Rec's not here, but I know a lot of positive things going on in the park, and Ms. White keeping the lights on, going out there, and so it looks good. So appreciate that. And Mr. White, again, I want to make sure you know that again we appreciate you kind of keeping all the teams together and making sure that we're moving forward. So thank you for that. I couldn't address the comments any more than fellow council members have stated on the comments from the public that you all shared with us. I think we all got our tax bill and probably a little bit shock and awe, if you will. But as Mr. Hinkle said, we've not been here just to amass wealth for the town. I would just say that that not just the needs that you might see every day or the ones that we've tried to deal with over the last 5 years or so, but there are needs that we know are in the future. Whether it's a town hall where we can barely get enough people in the room at one time, that we'll have to continue to look at, a growing law enforcement force to make sure that we can keep our town safe. There are a lot of needs that we will continue, while at the same time we will keep our residents in mind as well. So thank you for your comments and sharing your thoughts. At this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Wyatt for a comment from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I definitely got a lot to address over the tax rate and don't mind doing so, but I would like to start with the department directors and let them speak, and then I will get to addressing some of those things brought up at my turn.
All right. Anyway, fasten your seatbelts. Public Works report. So I found out today, I got verification from the state. We completed our 2022 local water supply plan. I haven't even had a chance to discuss with Duck, but we got some good news back. We have a thriving water system, and we have one of the lowest water loss percentages in the area. We're down to 7%, which is really, anything under 10% is really good. We purchased less water this year, but sold more water this year. So doing really good there. 10 years ago when I took over, we were at over 30% water loss. So every year we've whittled it down. I don't want to get too low because then I feel like I have to beat it the next year, so I'm good with 7%. So other than that, that's really the most exciting thing. Other than that, we're prepping right of ways for the upcoming mowing season, and still working wide open on the pump station efficiency program. So wide open in Public Works.
Mayor, Council, Human Resources, as I tend to say every month, most of my stuff is internal, so I don't speak a lot, but everybody got your W-2s, I was happy about that. Been coordinating with a cybersecurity company, getting everything running. I know most of you probably all received our trainings, so we're going to be doing monthly trainings, getting hopefully a more secure stature within the town when it comes to our cyber footprint. We know that's always a threat within any town or any company these days. So it's very important, and the number one threat usually is the people that are using the systems, not really necessarily the people coming into the system. So hopefully that training really hits everyone really well. For the people who actually watch our YouTube, we are hiring for a police officer or police recruit right now. I won't take the advertising. If Chief wants to speak anything to it, I'll let him do that, but have to put that out there that we are currently hiring for another officer. We have hired someone recently just to support the upcoming passport office that we are going to be establishing, so we're happy to have her come on board hopefully within the next 2 weeks here. Also, one of our big programs that I was able to establish this last year, our Employee Assistance Program, we received our grant from the North Carolina League Municipalities, which paid for everything but $13 of it. So we've got it for the whole town to support the complete wellness of our staff, and we're very happy to have received that from the league. Having ongoing meetings with our current health insurance carrier and future other potential carriers as we're coming into open season coming up shortly. Want to make sure we're getting the best moving forward for the staff. And been coordinating with the town clerk and Parks and Rec with finding possible technological efficiencies to determine ways to for Parks and Rec, like potential online registration scheduling for their programs, or for town clerk, potential approach for digitizing agendas, minutes, or improving voice recognition to kind of help, again, always improve the system, kind of bring it and make it more efficient. And then also on top of that, potentially improve some access to our citizens for information, for including searches for ordinances, agendas, meetings, and even adding tags for these videos, which you would be able to search. Don't know where we're going yet, still doing a lot of interviews and meetings with that, but we'll see how we go. Hopefully we can continue to just improve and find new efficiencies.
I won't speak too long, but thank you, Mayor, for your kind words. At first it was like drinking out of a water hose, but we're getting there. But I was going to speak on the budget and how we're in the budget process. You know, we're starting that, but thank you, gentlemen, for y'all's comments tonight. That is one thing we're going to take a hard look at. I've been bugging the county. I think I started bugging them about 3 weeks ago, and you know, I said, "Where's our numbers? You know, I want to see the assessment." And she said, basically, along with everyone else. So she kind of said, "Hold your horses." You know, first week of March is what she told me. So I'll keep reminding her that we need those numbers as soon as we can get our hands on them. But I won't speak too much longer, but I'd like to echo what Mayor Pro Tem said, as well as the mayor. We're not just collecting money just so we can brag about it. We do have many needs. We've addressed a few so far, but you know, as the town grows, we're just going to have more and more. And I can say that we've been blessed to be able to provide the services that we have with the number of staff we have. I've got friends and acquaintances that I know, and where they work compared to here, their departments are very much larger than ours. And so we have to be very efficient, and we have been, and we keep striving to be more and more efficient so that we can provide good services. And I know back when I used to audit municipalities, you could go in some places and you could just tell they had employees just sitting around, just coming in just to collect a paycheck. They'd come in, twiddle their thumbs for 6-8 hours and go home. Well, I can assure you we do not do that here. We are very busy constantly all the time. There's always something to be done, and that's a good thing, not complaining, but we do have needs. We need to grow. We need to prepare for the future, and in order to do that, you have to have money. And so each month I get a bill, or it's not a bill, but it's basically a letter saying, here's your rate from last year, here's your new rate for this year, and it never goes down. So inflation is affecting everyone, and we're going to do our very best to be fair and for the citizens, and that's all I've got.
Well, we're keeping busy too in the planning department. Last year we received a grant from CARTPO to create a new mobility plan. We hired our consultant last year, and we held our first meeting, steering committee meeting, at the end of January. That went well, and the consultant is holding stakeholders meetings starting next week. So we've got that plan, that project kicked off, and hopefully we'll have something to bring and share with you all closer to the summer, into the year. We've also received some planning documents, some applications. I was kind of thinking at the beginning of the year things might slow down. This might be the year that we don't hear as many rezonings, but I don't think that's going to happen. We've already met with, I think, 3 or 4 developers who are bringing projects to us. Some of those are by right projects. Some of them will come before you all for consideration of rezoning. We've already received one of those plans. It's for a, well, 2 of them actually. We received a concept plan for a single-family subdivision actually on the property down here on Southeast Way, where we heard a request for townhomes sometime last year. I think Mr. Pinnell represented them, and we turned that down. So the developer, same developer, brought back a by right project. So we're going to start reviewing those plans. I think they've got some infrastructure issues with water and sewer, but we're working through that. We also received an application for a townhome project that'll be adjacent to the Rocky Creek development on Highway 21, right across from where the distribution center was approved. So that's our first rezoning of the year. We're still working on a developer, with a developer. We've been working with them for about a year. They've got a really large project. It's a multifamily project, but it's not all apartments. Some of them are single-family homes. They have a mix of residential uses there at Exit 42. They've just got some issues with access to that site, so we continue to work with them. We will be bringing several text amendments before you all next month. That's something that we're working through as we update our ordinance. Permitting remains steady and busy. We're permitting all the homes that we've approved over the years, so we've seen a lot of development and continue to see that. The department's running well. We have a great staff. Not only do they do their jobs well, but I really enjoy working with them, and we have a good team. So we really appreciate all of your support, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, for your comments. During the month of January, which I give the prior month's reports, air officers responded to 482 calls for service, conducted 49 criminal incident investigations, and 27 traffic crash investigations. They made 294 traffic stops and arrested 23 subjects. We had 483 neighborhood patrols and 559 business checks. In community policing activities, one of the things is hearing concerns and complaints. We increased patrols in the Barium Seasons neighborhood due to traffic complaints and parking complaints. We also were focusing on looking for school bus violations, since we were told by Iredell Statesville Schools that county-wide there had been a massive increase in the passing stop school buses. Unfortunately, our officers were not, they didn't see a lot of that in Troutman. So, and then our officers for community outreach have been visiting the Council on Aging Nutrition site at Troutman Baptist Church. And then our officers also participated in the community project for Martin Luther King. And we are currently hiring for 2 police officer positions. And we're hiring either certified officers or somebody that's not trained. They go through the full testing process, evaluation, and exams, and then we pay them while they attend basic law enforcement training. So if you're listening to this and you're interested, please send in an application.
Several things that I have, and you all prefer I address the tax concerns or go through the other items first? I'll do it in whichever order you prefer.
Go through the other items first.
All right. We have first order of business for you all to consider before I get into my report. We received a letter through planning from John and Lisa Makalek is the way I would pronounce it. I'm sure I messed that up. I didn't mean to. It just says this letter is our formal request to have our property at 621 Stillwater Road, Troutman, removed from the city of Troutman, North Carolina taxation. And to explain that briefly, in North Carolina, as our town attorney can tell you, de-annexation takes acts from the state legislature. That's not something we on a local level do once they are in our town limits. That has been expressed to this gentleman. He had reached out to the state legislature, and they simply stated, you need to talk to local government first and make sure we need a point of direction on that. It is entirely up to you all if you even wish to hear him present his case as to why he should be de-annexed or take no action at all, and I'll be glad to follow your direction, either place it on next month's agenda. That does not require a motion, of course, or we can just let his request lay.
So my understanding is that the state legislature asked for a request from local government before they will act.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. They basically want to know the town council's position before they would even consider. De-annexation in North Carolina is generally not done. It is on a very rare case-by-case basis, but from the legislature's point, they don't like to hear anything unless the local town or city has agreed to move it forward.
Yep, so unless someone on council wants to make a motion, I've not been part of a de-annexation process. And, even, I've not heard any single hardship or any response. So, I'll leave it up to council if someone wants to.
I'll be glad to read his entire letter, but he has not stated a hardship. He just basically has expressed he don't want to be in the town, and for the few services that he gets. His is one of those property, I will say, out off Stillwater. We have what we call the inner loop and the outer loop. The inner loop does receive town water as well as other services that we provide. They, however, do not get septic system or gray water. But this lot of his was annexed in, I want to say it was 2008, if my memory serves me correctly. Might have been longer than that, from Crescent Resources. And there's been several owners since. However, he does not get an opportunity to pay us for water or sewer services. Other than that, there's nothing he's expressed for a hardship.
Any other thoughts?
When the gentleman bought the property.
Yes,
he
sir.
was in town.
Yes, sir.
He knew what he got, what he wouldn't get.
He should have, yes,
He
sir.
was fully aware of everything, shall I say, good and bad.
Yes, sir.
Well, we've had one other request that I'm aware of, and that was a gentleman over here on Hoover Road. It's a situation where, you create a crack, and it can soon become a flood.
That's correct.
And it sets a bad precedent. You do it for one, next one's gonna say, well, you did it for over here, and then so forth and so on. Again, this gentleman bought the property, eyes wide open, and if he didn't do his research, I'm sorry, but that's not our problem. And I don't mean to sound callous, but I just don't want to start something, especially if he's not expressing a hardship. I don't want to start something that, as I say, could turn into a line filled with people wanting to de-annex because they just feel like it.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I'll listen to anybody. I mean, I'm to listen to him, but I'm be quite honest, unless he can really bring tears to my eyes, hardship that's just, and I don't say that, with a tongue in cheek. I say that seriously, is unless he can really, a hardship that is just extraordinary. I would be hard pressed to to recommend to our legislative representative that they put a bill through for de-annexation. I just, again, no, I'm sorry. I just don't want to start that precedent unless there's just an overwhelming need on a particular case or person's benefit to do so. And so far, what I'm hearing is that's not the situation here.
Let me read it just in fairness for everybody. It says, our property is the only property or parcel on the lake side of Stillwater Road that pays property taxes to the city of Troutman. We receive only garbage service and the occasional Troutman Police Department drive-by. Please advise us what the next steps in the process are to be de-annexed. Thank you for your assistance in this matter.
Well, I go back to, when I moved to Troutman many years ago, I did it eyes wide open. I moved to a dirt road. At the time, it's paved now, but at the time it was a gravel road. And one of the first things I did when I moved here was I talked with a representative on the town council at that time. And he said, well, Mr. Hinkle, when you bought that, was it not dirt and gravel? And I said, yes, sir. And he said, then why did you move there? And I said, well, I like the house and, the neighborhood seems nice, blah, 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 blah. And he said, well, no one forced you. And I said, no one forced me. And, and I can go on and on. It was a good, pleasant conversation. The gentleman was not rude. He talked with me. And I really, he presented a good case. And I said, well, if it's, someday, if, town can afford it, it'd be nice you come down here and, maybe we can assess too property as you go along, may pay the road. And that happened several years later. That did happen. But, so I'm not the first one to come up with that idea. That came up back in the 1970s when I moved here. And the town was much smaller then. But again, I'm just not hearing what I just heard. I'm not hearing a hardship, undue hardship. And it's just, the man's disappointed now. And I'm disappointed in a lot of things, but that doesn't mean I can just walk away. Ask for forgiveness or something. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll be glad to listen to the gentleman. If he wants to come and and the other people on the council would like to hear it, that's fine. I'll listen. I'll certainly listen, and I'll listen seriously. But the bottom line is, unless he can almost bring tears to my eyes, and I say that seriously, I just find it hard pressed to go along.
This is a house on the lake?
Yes, sir.
You're talking about? On
Yes,
the
sir.
lake?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other?
I don't see no need to
Okay.
investigate it any further.
Okay.
Okay.
I would think he's a citizen, he's got a problem with the town. I think our door should be open to him if he wants to come talk to us.
Well, we have a public comment period. I mean, he's always welcome. That's not the case, but.
As I said, I'd be glad to listen to him. I mean, I'm certainly not closing the door on whatsoever. Be glad to listen. I mean, that's
If what I'm hearing is correct, if he would like to speak public comment period to then see if you all would hear the matter for a recommendation, is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple other things, as Lou touched on, it's that time of year that we do our employee benefits. The town of Troutman has historically been either basically a retirement stop or a training grounds that somebody would work 2 to 3 years and then leave and go to other jobs. One of the things that we have done per you all's direction, because we can't come out and compete with salaries in all positions, that equivalent towns or neighboring towns are paying. A lot of times people want to put us in a box and say, well, what does towns your size pay? Most of those towns are in the mountains or in eastern North Carolina, and the pay is quite different. They're not located a half hour north of Charlotte and in between two larger municipalities that have the same positions and are competing for the same employees. So one of the things we do there is try to make sure our benefits package on the insurance is good, yet stays affordable. So we are reviewing that. We was able to increase our pay a little over a year ago, or about a year ago, became the highest for recruitment of law enforcement. Now, once that happened, everybody else passed us, and we're in last place again. So we do expect, just for knowledge, we're doing our research to make some changes or suggestions there that hopefully you all will approve. One other thing I would like to point out, the chief and I has talked, and when he gives out these statistic reports of what our officers is doing, there's been a little bit of conversation in places will say, my gosh, look what all they're doing. This crime's going up, the crime's doing that. And that's actually a misnomer. And what I mean by that is we are now keeping accurate reports, and when they respond to certain calls, the chief has made it mandatory that reports be taken, to whereas previously that simply we was not being made aware. And likewise, when we say neighborhood checks, he has a different level of what that means. So it absolutely, his officers are working more diligently, and in doing so, they are arresting a lot of people coming from other places. Very few locals wind up in the county jail, but they will accommodate them if need be. But by working traffic, making sure that we don't have these issues, it is causing investigations and arrests. And I just want the people to know that the crime of Troutman has not increased. Our reporting method is more accurate to state and federal standards. Chief, does that sound accurate the way I said that? The other thing I would like to get into now is we have talked Monday about the training for planning and zoning. I spoke with a lady today from Central Atlanta, and they will be providing us in the near future. It would occur sometime between the end of March and June, but we will have 2 different training sessions. Both of those, one for the Planning and Zoning Board, one for the Board of Adjustments, as it's quasi-judicial, requires a whole different set of training. But both of those I expressed that you all may wish to attend, just so you all can see what's being told and heard as well, and that they welcome that. But between Lynn and I, as she works hand in hand with both boards, we will get that scheduled and have dates coming forward to you. The other thing is to jump into the 3 gentlemen's concerns, and I absolutely appreciate all of them taking time to come and speak with us tonight. As several of you all mentioned, I would just like to point out a couple things for everybody's consumption, and not just those in attendance tonight. Tax evaluation in the state of North Carolina is required to be done every 8 years. And most counties decided to split that and do it every 4 years. Some counties are more aggressive and do it every 2 years. So they're basically doing a constant evaluation. The whole purpose of that is so that you don't get that normal shock factor of what we're experiencing here. I'm sure Mayor Pro Tem and maybe the mayor, I'm not trying to age you, sir, can remember back when we did the 8-year evaluations. I can remember my parents having the same grief that many are expressing in the community today about the latest tax evaluation. It just so happened that property evaluations went up. The county employees did their jobs based off of the criteria they're supposed to, and had done a heck of a job in going out and saying these are the values based off of home sales there. There are some examples, and the first question asked when people said, hey, this is not right, is would you sell your property for that price? If the answer is yes, then look for why they missed yours. And I'll use one example of some friends of mine in Mooresville had a lake property, and theirs went almost 90% increase. And they're like, what in the world is this? And when I asked them, would you sell it for that? They said, heck yeah. I said, okay, that had to come from some other comp or comparable. And they said, well, yeah, we can tell you which one it probably was. And they said which one of their neighbors sold their house on the lake. And they said, and I said, well, what's the difference between yours and theirs that yours is not worth that much? And I aggravated them with some other things about their house looked like mine, needing windows or something. And they said, no, it's real simple. They have lake property year-round, ours for 3 or 4 months of the year, we got mud because there's no lake in our cove. So something like that could certainly, and as Mr. McNiff pointed out, there is certainly a process to go through if somebody thinks that they have been wronged as far as that evaluation. But having said that, our tax rate for the county and the town of Troutman and overall cost of living is one of the lowest in this area. And part of the reason why we started collecting the money, and I explained to Mr. McNiff and a few others, I don't recall, Jim, if it was last year or year before, when we started saying why was they not repealing the tax rate back that 3 cents that was placed on in 2016. And it's because, as you all pointed out, we've got to build a town hall going forward. And at this point, based off of the general, when you build a town hall, it needs to be a building that is built with a minimum of 20-year plan. We've had to make expansions to the park out of the public request for we need more amenities. But if we go back to building the town hall to do a 20-year plan, once we move to that town hall, then this current location would be refurbished and then become the Troutman Police Department. But just the general numbers, we have not gotten to getting real numbers because it costs money to have somebody to come in and tell you this is what you're going to need and this is how you're going to build it. When I know, as you all in our previous discussions, we don't have the money for it. We do not have the money. And just the general projection, if we went today just to build the town hall, our annual budget would go up 25% just to pay for a loan to pay for that building. That does not include refurbishing this. So even though we are accruing money, as was pointed out, it is because once that trigger is pulled, whether it be 3 years or 5 years down the road, that we do build a new town hall and then refurbish this one immediately to follow, that there's at least some funds there that's not going to increase our annual town budget up to a third. The next thing that I would say to that is in including equipment, tractors, we're having to add police. We have been incrementally adding, as Justin pointed out, as I pointed out in talking about the chief, and as you all saw with Mark Jewett, I'm very proud of the efficiency that we get out of our employees, but the overall cost of doing business, a lot of these folks are having to work extra hours because we need the extra personnel. We have no place to put them here. We purchased the house next door and some property next door with the intent of expanding at some point in time. So a lot of times when we get criticized, they're just collecting money and they're not doing anything with it. All of that is part of the long-term plan that we discuss openly at planning retreats, budget retreats, and also during normal meetings. We have the planning folks and code enforcement in the house next door, and then we have Parks and Rec that's going to be going just so we can add 2 office positions here that we already put HR in one, so we only have 1 office left. And that still does not mean that the police chief has appropriate evidence storage room. They do not. Even though it has been cleaned up because of them working and doing what they need, it's not efficient. He has no place to do officer training. He has no place to have squad changeover meetings. We're all gathering up in a closet somewhere to get that done. And I'm not saying those things to say that you all have failed us or the citizens have. I'm just saying it to repeat and reiterate the fact that we are using those monies even though they don't see a new town hall being built. That's the reason that it's there. And as I explained to one of the county commissioners recently, it does not make good economic sense, even though this is a punch in all of our arms. I too pay town taxes like you all. This is a punch in our arm. But the reason you do that evaluation the way you did is the first year it's supposed to be a lot of gravy left. The second year there's supposed to be a little bit of gravy. The third year it's supposed to be neutral. And then the fourth year, you're having to go back to borrow. That's why the county went to doing the evaluation every 4 years. We as a town have gotten much better since 2015 of following that plan, but we are saving money, and we reiterate that and tell that to the public all the time. It gets lost. When our tax bill goes up 30 or 40%, I certainly understand the frustration and the aggravation, but then the point is, it does not make good economical sense to reduce the tax rate and then turn around in 2 years and go in for a loan and increase the tax rate back up. If you can keep those there, and we don't know, I'm stressing, I don't know, but once these numbers come in from us, from the county that we have been asking for, we certainly will have again the planning hearings and the budget hearings to the budget retreats to make sure that everybody knows if what it is based off of the tax rate at the hand and the new income that's expected to come here. I'll be glad to answer any questions or address anything that you all have.
But just so that we're clear, Mr. Wyatt, but the town has not increased its tax rate in 7 years?
That's 2016, as Mr. McNiff pointed out, it went up 3 cents effective that year, and it has not changed since. That is correct.
And I don't recall the date before, but it hadn't been increased in many years before.
Correct.
I don't remember what
That's
that
why
date
we had
was.
to do the sharp increase.
Right. And comparing us, between us and our surrounding municipalities, we're somewhere right in the middle.
Well, the overall cost, we are actually the cheapest, but yes, our tax rate is very comparable. I think we might be slightly higher than one municipality, but we're lower than the county, and we're lower than 2 other municipalities.
Any questions, other questions for staff? All right.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Please stay.